first things that we'll try to get done.
Okay.
That's it, yeah, that's it. 1, 2, 3, 4.
And that's been so nice to be out.
So we have a few folks who are probably still going to be walking in shortly, and then we have some folks who won't be here. We know that Sam won't be here, Sonji is sick and will not be here. Jayalo was going to have to leave early, so hopefully he'll be here. He had a part of the conversation that we wanted to have. Amy, as you all know, has stepped off after her term. So she's termed out and decided not to go ahead and re-up, so to say. And she did mention that she'd be here so that we could do our standard appreciation of her and her service. So we'll see when they walk in. But first, to make sure we get and stay as close to the agenda as possible, do we have enough folks to do the minutes? To approve the minutes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, we have enough folks. So for folks in here who would not need to abstain because they were missing from the last meeting, you have your meeting minutes. Alan.
Sorry.
Okay.
I'll see someone.
Okay. So looking at the meeting minutes, if we have, are there any questions about the meeting minutes? Any changes that anyone sees? Anything that should be updated?
I wasn't actually here, so actually I'm not sure about these, but there are some acronyms that we should be careful about. I think BMA, I believe, is Black Belt Achievement. But then when it says HRC was asked by, I believe its outcomes is related to KPMs.
Key performance measures.
Right. So we might just be careful about this.
Yeah, thank you for that. We'll make a note, both for Kenya, if she's helping to take notes, and then Tatiana, thank you.
That's
for
it,
taking
yeah.
notes.
And Coco is on the back also.
Right. Notes on acronyms. Thank you for that, Alan. Anybody else have any updates or things that we should be aware of as we're looking at these things? Okay. Ashley, possibly?
Is there another page besides this stuff?
There
is.
That's what that third page.
Yeah,
Oh.
there's a front and back and then.
It's right over
That's
there.
right, that was the third, yeah.
Okay.
And it starts with Lavon from her testimony, or excuse me, her comment.
That's yours.
That's not.
Actually, that's it.
Okay, can I have or would anyone like to call a motion, or call a motion to pass the minutes?
I just, before we do, so I don't have the other pages probably because I didn't grab it. So I'm not looking at that, but just the first page under the public meeting law notes. I'm just trying to understand structuring decision-making process, public meeting law apply. Sorry, I'm not sure I'm understanding.
Yes, that, while I was there, that means that if you're making a structuring decision, that public meeting law would apply. I assume that that's what
That's
you're,
what that-
okay.
Okay.
It's what you do and what's publicly
Okay, so my understanding of this is that subcommittees that are advisory to the larger whole, the whole HRC, and when they're at quorum, public meeting law applies quorum according to larger group, but when they're not, they're not. That's what we've been told from
Yes.
Kaya. So I might revise this just a little bit.
Specify that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm happy to offline do that, or I don't know. Just based on what she shared, what I understood, okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you.
So along with the update specification that despite quorum, a subcommittee would not then mean that public meeting law applies. Is there a motion to pass the minutes? Oh, yes, sorry.
I just to add my name to the attendees for that.
Okay. Let's also add Rebecca to the attendees. Okay. Anybody else? Sorry, I didn't mean to jump ahead. Okay. Now would anyone like to motion to pass the minutes?
I move to pass the minutes.
Okay. Second. Thank you, okay. So next, guys, we have the agenda.
I took the vote.
Oh, sorry, yes. Sorry, I've had an interesting day. Did we all? Are we all?
All in favor of?
All in favor
accepting the minutes
of
as-
accepting the minutes as with all of the updates that we've specified thus far? Vote aye, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Abstention?
Abstain.
Alan abstain. It's motion seconded and passed. Okay, thank you guys for that. And with our agenda, the agenda was done more recently, so I believe that any of the last things that came up were added, but does anyone else have any additional items or things to be considered? If Emmanuel is here, then yeah, but we can go ahead and note that under the committee and action communications, and if he is here, then we'll go ahead and do that. And if not, then we'll have to have a later time, but thank you for bringing that up. Anyone else? Damon, Rebecca, Alan, anybody add anything? Okay. Can I get a motion to accept the proposed agenda for today's meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All in favor of accepting the agenda as proposed, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay. We have our agenda for today. So we're gonna go ahead and get started in there. Irene was, is Irene not, did she decide not to come? Okay, well, we're gonna move that off until she does get here. Possibly, that's supposed to be a 3-minute, really quick announcement that she wanted to drop in before she has her CRC meeting, correct?
That was canceled.
Oh, okay, so maybe that's one of the reasons why she didn't rush here. She wants to update us with something. In the place of that, actually, because I don't have this on, Kofi wanted to see if HRC would be interested in attending this upcoming event, and if so, if we would buy some seats to go to that. I'm gonna pass this around if you're interested. If you can just note your name, that'll help us find out if folks are interested. It's not until June 5th. It would be 6:30 to 10. It's an event for IRCO Africa House in particular. So if you are interested, please just note, and then we'll go ahead and take that and look at attending as HRC members. Okay. So, the next item was actually supposed to be Diallo and the CLEAR conversation, in particular, the Know Your Rights training, and the conversation around who the vendor would be to host that, and also just being very transparent around the fact that Daniel, our new commissioner, works for a group who's on the proposed group, and just having an actual conversation about that. But Diallo's not here. Amy is also not here. These two people would be the folks who would have that conversation and really help lead it for us. And I think, Daniel, one of the things that we also know is for that to happen, it was gonna be a place in the space that you kind of stepped away. So I'm not gonna ask you to say much unless, I mean, I don't know, do you feel like you have a background or can you share anything about that?
Yeah,
It was kind of like pre your commission life and so.
Right, so we started that conversation before I signed up to be commissioner. And even before then, we talked to the city attorney to make sure what was going on. So a few things that were key to it, a proposal that was sent over, originally I was going to handle the project, not something else to handle. And secondly, I'm paid on commission, so it wouldn't actually change my salary whatsoever if we did or didn't do this. So even from the paperwork that we sent over, I've been removed from proposal and contract employment, and somebody else will take it. That's pretty much all I have.
Okay, well, and I appreciate that. And Kenya, and I'm sorry, does everyone know what we're talking about? So the Clear Committee, Know Your Rights training, they're, one of what they wanted to do was to put together, and again, this was kind of pre-me, so that's one of the reasons why it was really important that Amy and or Diallo were here to share. Wanted to put together a video, and the video production and being able to really engage in a comprehensive Know Your Rights project for the community. That conversation initially, and he's working it out, but was happening with, is it Izzo? Of which Daniel is an employee, and again, those conversations happened far long ago, and you're just this is your first actual commission meeting, right? So we just wanted to make sure that as a commission, we were absolutely transparent and talked about conflict of interest and that those conversations happened. Kenya, were you gonna offer?
Yeah, when we spoke with Lisa early on in the whole planning phases, she stated that for her, the conflict of interest would be if you were able to vote on, or if you were to vote on the yes or no around whether or not that company is used. So once the proposal comes to the full body and the body votes to move forward or not, he should abstain from voting on anything that's related to that process.
Does it also mean that he shouldn't, because I know your interest has been to work within Clear, does that mean if Clear's doing that work that he can't engage there, or is it just from a voting perspective?
Just from the voting perspective.
Okay.
So you can work on the committee or on the project, but he's not able to vote on anything related to the project.
Okay. Other commissioners, do we have questions? I think Amy walked in. Amy, we're actually talking about the Know Your Rights training, and that was something that Diallo and you were Diallo in particular, and then you by way of, we knew that you were gonna be here, might be able to offer something. Do you want to come back up to the table and offer any kind of, I guess, perspective for the sake of the conversation?
That's so weird that you're always.
It is weird. Can I sit here? I'm sorry, I missed the beginning of all of that.
Literally just started.
Okay, good. So I stepped away from Clear and Know Your Rights stuff as I started the chair stuff. A lot of it wasn't on my radar, and I know we had talked about it initially, and then when I came back in, I did hear Kenya explain what they had received from the deputy city attorney. And I was having a conversation with a commissioner the other day who asked me, how did that get resolved, and I couldn't repeat it. So that kind of moved this into place. I realized I better be able to repeat it, I better be able to understand it. So I went to clarify, tried to get a hold of Kenya, and then ended up talking to Daniel, who told me the two pieces, which I think you guys just summarized, right? So for me, I think that makes sense, and that's really helpful. We all know your rights, and Daniel. And it was important to me to encourage that the decision and the issues at play are transparent and brought to all of HRC because it could have consequences down the line, and particularly in terms of perception of conflict of interest.
Diallo, welcome. Thanks for being here. I know you have to head out pretty soon as well. So do you want to go ahead and jump in with conversation or?
Sure. Are we just talking about?
Mayor, I think.
Okay. So I don't know how much you covered.
She just, her perspective is what she gave.
Right. So yeah, we started the project before Daniel became a commissioner with EZO, and now that he is a commissioner, we really just have to kind of see what the commission feels about the situation. How you guys feel about possible conflict of interest, even though he's not going to be getting paid for it. So.
What's EZO's role? Is it the media, they're the
Yeah, they're
video
the
production company?
video, exactly.
And so that's the whole, we wanted to have a very real conversation with everyone here at the table. We wanted to be able to not have it just be an executive meeting or anything like that, or just some phone calls about, again, EZO had been tapped prior to Daniel even being, I don't even know if that was before you were interested or what, about the commission to do this work in particular. And if you, Diallo and Amy, if you guys can help, I think one of the things that's key is that for all of the pieces that would go into making this produced and everything, including the translations, and can you actually do a little bit more about why EZO, like why is this even a conversation versus like a larger procurement conversation? Because I think that probably also holds weight.
Yeah. So you're asking why EZO specifically?
Yes.
Well, it
And
was
the scope of the work, like what makes EZO.
Yeah, it was a suggestion from Kenya to work with EZO, and once we figured out a little bit of EZO's history and who they are, I think, one of the only production companies that is ran by minority or by people of color. And what was the other specifics of it that kind of make it special?
So we're 100% minority owned. One of the few Hispanic marketing advertising agencies in the Portland metro area where we're working, and we're completely bilingual and bicultural. So we specialize in making sure that the marketing we do is always culturally sensitive, especially in what has to do with respecting women, respecting men, making sure that what we put out there isn't just booze and keeps like that.
So do you guys want to offer a bit more? I mean, I guess, is there anything else that you guys have that you feel is important to have in the conversation?
Yeah.
And I guess just for the other commissioners, this is a time for folks to really ask questions. I know in particular Sam was a commissioner who had a question about, well, how does that happen? And the conflict of interest of a commissioner being employed by a vendor that could possibly be doing work, what does it really look like? And so this conversation again is meant to make sure that it's out and we're having a conversation in front of everyone. So please ask questions, things like that. That's what we're here to do.
Is there a budget?
Yeah, there was a proposal sent, but it's still a draft form right now. It budgets for 6 or 7 videos, and it's about 18.
We've seen ranges between 18 and 23. Right now, we're looking at a 19.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it was 18 to 23. Yeah.
That's below the limit where you have to bid, have open bids.
No, it's all over. That's $5,000.
Oh, well then,
So and that's,
procurement process happen in the first place, then was there enough of our?
well, that's exactly why I wanted them here, because
There was no open RFP, and it wasn't a procurement in the beginning. It was more of a, hey, what do you offer, what do you got, let's see what you would do. It was sort of like maybe a soft proposal before we got an idea of what the whole of the project would cost. And if we would need to do the short PTE, or if we'd have to do the full-on proposal. And so we got that.
can you specify what PTE is?
It's
the procurement?
It's a procurement process. It's
Okay.
just an acronym that we use internally. And so that's how we got engaged. Then we haven't made any sort of commitments to them, except that we know what their proposal would look like to us.
I mean, I guess my question would be, is the city required to make it an open, RFP
They will.
process? Okay.
Are you certified MBE with the city,
With the state.
with the state?
Is that it in Nadia's?
Yes.
So Avoid the state, yeah.
So that's something I didn't catch, that, I misunderstood that. I thought that because of the specific nature of what they offer, that we wouldn't need to go through the RFP process.
There's a bit of a different RFP process that we go through because of the uniqueness of what we're looking for and the uniqueness of what they can offer, but it's still in the realm of an open procurement process. We'll have to find 3 other comparable companies, but I'm pretty sure we won't find one because when I found them, they were the kind of the only ones that did what they do, and the only ones who are like they are that do what they do.
But it just may be a process where it needs to be,
That needs to happen.
it still has to go through that open.
Right, it still has to go through that.
That's a large amount of transparency.
That's why we think if there's others out there that feel qualified, they ought to be allowed to bid on it.
Thing is that there's no other minority-owned advertising agency.
Well, but regardless, you still have to post the opportunity and that, I think that's the rules, right? Like, that's not up to us, that's.
As a commission, I think there should be a protocol of how we want to do business, whether or not it's a city or a state requirement. I think we would want something that is open to people to at least apply.
Right, and I think that actually that conversation in particular, what you just brought up, is also a hope that I have that we would, as a commission, when we're talking about sponsorships and how we engage and how we do, that would be an aspect of it, which, for my assumptions of the conversation, because again, I was super outside of it, the reason why EZO maybe came up to Kenya, in her perspective, was maybe because they were looking first at like, things that we as a commission might value. One of those things could be that this is a NWESB, owned or certified organization. Okay, that might be one of those things. So I assume that was kind of what made it take place. I don't. Okay.
It is, and it's a value of the city to have NWESBs. That's just to make it a little bit more of a point. The food that you guys get come from NWESBs, and those are the businesses that I seek out to provide, the food and services for the commission.
So
that was right in line with what I typically do for you all meetings.
So it sounds like that with that knowledge that they are an NWESB, that still would not remove us from the process of having to go through the typical procurement that would require.
I'm not sure that's true.
An open bid. Okay.
I'm not sure that's true. There is a dollar amount that's higher than 5,000 if you can sole source it to an MBE. I don't know what that dollar amount is.
Oh, there's
There's a higher limit
Okay.
than the regular $5,000 if you can sole source it to an MBE. I don't know what the dollar amount is. So maybe. So my suggestion to you is, one, if it has to go open bid, it's not going to happen this fiscal year, so you might as well just forget about it in this term. That doesn't mean stop the process. It's just not going to happen and get paid for with dollars you have for this fiscal year, because those have to be completed by May 15th. Never happen. If the commission decides, well, one, if the limit is above what the dollar amount for the proposal is, then the commission needs to decide whether it wants to then focus or have as a guiding principle focusing on contracting with MBEs first. If that's the case, and we can sole source it, then we can begin that paperwork and probably get it done before May 15th. If the commission decides that's not what it wants to be as a guiding principle and start that way and would prefer everything be open bid, it's not going to happen before May 15th. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay, so we can find out tomorrow what that dollar limit is, but you need to make your decision before we know the answer to that question.
Right.
Okay?
Thank you for that specification, and that was the whole reason why we wanted to bring it up as well. I think, I almost feel like there should be a larger process, but to really specify what are our guiding principles when we do look at contracting, something like that, sponsorships, and just in general, which I know, Rebecca, I keep looking at you because I know that you and Sanji have been working in that realm of things. Maybe not the contracted kind of proposal stuff, but in general, sponsorships and principles that would bring up for us. However, I'd like to, I don't know if I need to call a vote, or do we just need to have a conversation around, as a commission, us identifying NWESB certification as, just like we do with our food, to be one of our first go-tos when we're looking at contracting and proposals and things. Go ahead, Tiana.
Well, first I want to ask, is this something that we're going to talk about at the retreat?
Yes.
As far as the
Well,
process?
The process of what?
The
Community
process.
engagement, yes.
Okay, cool. So this will be with, okay, cool. And as far as us agreeing, I mean, I would like to have consensus, so if there's any thoughts against this, I mean, I would rather us raise some.
Right, we need to do it now because the
Yeah, and then vote.
retreat doesn't happen until after the 15th anyway.
My
So
perspective, just to start, is
Thank
that
you.
as long as we're following, whatever the city contracting rules are for this particular case, and as long as we've been assured that there is no conflict of interest from the city attorney, then that's the work.
thank you. Dale, do you want to offer anything? I think we'll just go around and I'll actually ask your folks. Go ahead.
Actually, can I back up one? So have we actually talked in the group as to whether or not we want to, that this whole project has the proposal come to the full body and been accepted, the budgeted dollar amount? So we're talking about spending $18,000, and I don't know if that proposal has actually come to this body or not.
It hasn't, and that's something that Clear was working on, and I think what's happened now, I think the reason that the catalyst for this conversation is Daniel being on the commission, and even the conversation within Clear at the point that they could even be considered sole source. And so I wanted to have the conversation right out now.
Well, yeah, so it might be that the actual scope of work or dollar amount is something we would be like step 2 of us having this conversation if we're in agreement that, given these other issues we need to clarify, that we don't have disagreement about the actual contract with them, assuming the rest falls in there. Does that make sense?
Well, I guess the concern, I think, is what Monte is saying, is if we need to get, if for this fiscal, if we want to try and spend that money this fiscal year, we need to get it under contract by May 15th. Today is May 6th. And that means that we don't have another opportunity as a group to talk about whether or not we're going to spend $18,000 on this video project. So to me, that's really the first question. The second question we asked is whether or not we want to prioritize MWESBs as our contractor. That's a different question. The third question is whether or not we have a conflict of interest that exists with the people of ESO in this process. So I'm not sure which question we're trying to answer. The critical one seems to be whether or not we want to get under contract by May 15th, which has a lot of issues around.
Right. Well, and just to clarify before, and I know that budgets and the conversation about budget before was a hairy one, but the budget that is left, and I'm saying left, like not even at the 11th hour, like 11 hour and 50 minutes, the Know You're Right, like your guys' ideal budget for this, what was that? What did you guys initially propose when you guys were offering? Was that the 14? That I've heard the number 14 before.
Yeah, it was 14 or 12, and then when we went into it, we realized for the minimum of what we wanted to do with Kenya's help, we learned that we needed to ask for more. Is that your memory?
So I say that just because the budget that we had and what we're looking at and the budget that's kind of out there, this fits with Bennett kind of, even though the date, again, I'm saying this coming.
I think
Yes.
that we ought to start and say that,
That's a
the
big
people around
number.
this table agree that, and I would say, I guess what I would say is, I agree we could spend it, if we can spend it by May 15th. If we're gonna talk about spending it next year, I think we need to look at what the full budget is.
Right.
So if we can do it by May 15th, I think it's a great project, I think we should do it. Then we have to answer the second question about MDA-ESBs, and then we have to answer the third question about ISO.
So there's 3 decisions that we have to make as a group in the next, couple minutes? And does anybody have questions about the actual Know Your Rights project, or the video? Because if so, I mean, we might be able to answer that real quick so we can agree to actually do this as a commission.
And typically, Alan let me know, we'd bring it out, we'd have a conversation about what this looks like, we'd have the scope of work that we'd be looking at, and these are things that you guys as a committee have been working on, but again, this process has been set up, again, based on what we've already talked about. Did I got somebody else?
Can I ask a question?
Sorry.
Is there an expectation that this will be put online? Okay, you're gonna have to caption it. So that's probably not been rolled into the cost of the proposal.
It was in discussion, and I was just, the captioning, yeah, we had a long discussion about that. It doesn't appear that it's reflected in that last proposal, so that would be something I think we need to confirm. Yeah.
Yeah, we did talk about it.
So this is from the 13-14 budget that has to be spent out by June?
By
14, yeah. So it has to be spent,
The
this is money
15th.
that has to be spent by.
The 15th is what the date was. That's right.
And if you guys also don't know, a video on Know Your Rights is filling a niche, because there's not really very many videos that clearly portray the right way to deal with law enforcement and community, so.
Can you also share that you were talking about multiple videos that would be multiple languages?
Different languages and different scenarios.
That would, and the idea is that it's shareable, and that's the whole idea behind, outside of just the general production, that would go into one video.
Another question is will the HRC as a full body have final approval of a product?
Yeah, it's an HRC.
And the clear committee would be monitoring it as it's developed and reporting to us about it.
So
So we'd see it before it was released for the public.
yeah, the team that would be leading that work and would really have, just kind of driving that would be clear. So I want to be clear about that. Sorry. But yes, and so, I guess I'm saying that because I wouldn't want Clear to go through the entire work and then to bring us essentially what, and then, we decide we want, that's not where we need to be engaged with the Clear committee work as that's occurring, so, yeah. Oh, sorry.
I just wanted to add that one of the other unique features about this project is that it doesn't just do what the ACLU does and say these are your rights, know them, but the videos will give you sort of a vision or view of how to not escalate a situation while expressing that you know your rights, and how to maintain your dignity while you're saying to an officer, hey, I don't know that you can do this, or I'm aware of this right that I have. And I think that's really, I've not seen anything else out there like it. And we did some pretty extensive research on looking for other videos that are similar. I know that Daniel did a lot of that research too, from their end, and there's nothing else out there that will show people from various communities how to assert their rights without escalating the situation with the police, and in a way that maintains their dignity.
So there's that, and I think the other thing that I would offer really quickly is that I've also personally been asked by folks on Facebook, in the midst of a lot of the things that are happening in the community, we need something like this, we need something like this, and while I couldn't specify, this is exactly what we're doing, I let them know that keep your eyes open. I know that there are groups and teams working on this type of work, so as we're talking about these three, and thank you for kind of specifying out those three questions, is this something we want to spend? If it is, this timeline that we're looking at, I know that there's an appetite for something like that, and thank you for that specification.
I just had a question for the Clear Committee, or people who are doing that kind of scan. If you all kind of do CIO, they've done a lot of Know Your Rights training. I think more specific to housing, but they have led that whole info filing campaign, and that's my thing, and they have a really large coalition of like all communities of color, American refugees, people from the LGBTQ community, like just a really big group of people. So so I was wondering if they were engaged, or if they kind of knew about this, or if there would be a way to partner.
We want to partner with
somehow. Okay.
Yeah, as well as other groups who have done Know Your Rights thing projects like HRC and ACLU, or Cop Watch does Know Your Rights as well. And I think that this actual video will help them, because they'll be able to use video.
And I know CIO has already done videos before, but I'm wondering more like in terms of in the scope of work, there'd be an opportunity for two organizations to partner together, or I'm interested in some, type of formal partnership with the funding piece and all of that.
Can I quickly pop in? We did consult all of those groups that Diallo mentioned, and so CIO, we spoke recently to, or Diallo spoke recently to, specifically again on what scenarios would they
Right.
like to see for specific, for specific information. So that started, that partnership, and the next step was going to be in our vision, going deeper with those organizations to ask, okay, what really would be most useful for the communities that you serve and represent for us to model? Is it a house visit, for example?
Yeah, and that's
We
it.
actually asked two questions. What communities would be best and what scenarios and so on.
Yeah, but I think maybe what you're asking is partnering and funding the project.
Yes, that's because I think engaging an organization in that way, in the conversation about helpful for your clients or your, it's different from saying, we're actually having, there's a funding opportunity, we should be partnering in some capacity. But I just wanted to bring that up just because I know I'm really familiar with a lot of CIO's work and how great they are, so that's just kind of bring that. But I know also we're on a timeline, so.
Right, and I just offered, Damon, I know you've been wanting to ask a question.
It was in response to what Kenya was saying about other videos. This might have really gone over my head, but I might have previously mentioned, but there is a video called 10 Rules to How to Engage with the Police. 10 rules are, I mean, I could send out the link for it, but it's 38 minutes, and it's ironically, it's a Cato Institute sponsored video, but it's led by Billy, I forgot his last name, but he is the lawyer out of Baltimore that defending the Freddie Gray family, and it's used a lot in terms of it's used a scenario based, and it's aimed at communities of color for.
We looked at that video, we all got a chance to view it, and it just didn't resonate for our community. I don't think, and so we wanted to use actors from the community, like youth, young people who are actually people of those. I think we chose the first 5 of the safe harbor languages.
Right.
So we wanted to try and use people from those communities and young people of various ages to be in those videos to represent the community that we live in. It's a good video, but it just didn't feel like it really would resonate for the community that we live in.
And another thing about it is that these videos are going to be about 3 minutes long, so they're going to be a lot shorter, a lot easier to share, a lot easier to watch. Attention to.
The other thing I would recommend, I mentioned it to Diallo, but I wanted to mention to the group, I think it would be really important to have input from the CBRC, and specifically, I think it would be valuable in a Know Your Rights video that we're trying to see, like what helps to de-escalate, if we were able to include an officer speaking very informally, saying, this is what drives me nuts, when somebody does this. And if we could hear that perspective of, this is, from my perspective as a police officer, this is what escalates it for me. And because I think that would be an important thing for people to hear, just what their side of things is all about.
Thank you for that.
So we've been working on this since January, so it's not something that we're trying to sneak into.
Right.
And now we're finally up against the plan, and it's like, holy crap, we got to figure out all these things. We were hoping we would have been figured out months ago. So now we're actually at the point where it's got to be decided. We want police input. We're going back and forth between organizations saying yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. Time's going to run out.
Well, and I think one of the other things to highlight, and Alan, I see you, is that right now, the 3 questions that we need to answer now to make sure if we decide we want to do this by the 15th is not going to limit our capacity to really massage what the final product looks like. So all of these things, if you're, again, still interested, awesome. Let's get engaged with that clear group, and let's make sure that these perspectives and these things are brought up. And thank you for what you're asking, because those are a lot of what we're doing. But
to speak to the first question, so I actually will make a motion, and we all make it very specific, that we budget up to $18,000 to spend in this fiscal year, the 14-15 fiscal year, in Clear's budget to produce the Know Your Rights training video. So that's the first part of that question.
Right.
The actual number is 19 right now.
up to $19,000. And for this fiscal year, so we need to revisit it. If we don't make it into this deadline, let's revisit it when we come to the next budget meeting.
Ashley, it sounds like you're about to.
Nope, just wanted to, it's 19 and 35.
Okay. Do you want a second?
Yeah, a
Motion?
second.
Okay. Motion by Alan, seconded by Ashley. Let's see. Were you gonna say something else? Okay, I didn't want to cut you off. Any other questions before I call for a vote with the motions? Yes, Tanya?
So the motion is to budget for the 14-15 fiscal year?
14,
For current fiscal year.
yeah.
Fiscal year ending June 30th, 2000.
Okay, so I just want to see if there's a caveat that we should go with this, because from the contracting perspective, I don't feel confident that this can be under contract by the 15th.
So that's, I think the other two things that we need to find out were two, if we agree as a commission that our guiding principles would lead us to MWESB being one of our first choices, or that being our guiding principle on who we would use and who we would engage, which would then move us into a possible higher dollar amount for a sole source to be considered, therefore removing what could be that, would you call it a PTE? And then
We're already out of the PTE realm because we're over $5,000.
Okay.
So that's an absolute.
Okay.
What we're unclear on is what is that?
What is that higher dollar amount? And that's what we're gonna verify. You mentioned that we can get that done tomorrow possibly?
Yeah, make a phone call.
At least make a phone call, okay.
Well, and there's 7 days left to do this in, like 1 full week. And I'm feeling even less confident that this can be under contract by 15.
Who's actually gonna do the paperwork on
Me.
it?
Yeah, so I feel pretty confident that I won't be able to do this by the 17th because I have to work with the procurement office. I need to work with Joe inside our office to get this done. And I have other jobs. So,
Do we actually have a full scope of work? And what I heard is there's a tentative proposal that's not complete, so that's not even a done negotiation yet.
Well, I think the scope of work is, which is typically what you would head into building something with, I mean, you guys answer that again.
Well, the thing is, like, there's just that room to massage still. It's a complete document. It's a complete proposal. I actually sent it to the commissioners along with the committee reports. It's just, there's still a little bit of room to massage it if we want to change things.
From my view, it's complete except for that clarifying of the caption piece. For me, it felt like it needed a phone call or an email to clarify, this includes a caption, just to make sure we're all on the same page with that, and then to me, it was ready to go. As soon as we got through this process, it could have been ready before this meeting a few days ago, we just realized we needed to get through this conflict of interest situation. But that doesn't include what you need, the days that you need. I was thinking deadline 15th to you. Okay.
15th. It has to be in the.
No, it's gotta be in the system.
Yeah.
But I still think, even with the understanding that we may not be able to get this done before the deadline, that's really the only thing we can decide on right now for budget. Like, we can't decide to spend next year's budget on that right now, right?
Right.
Right, so if we answer the 3 questions today, we're doing as much as we can at this juncture, and then
We'll see what we can
okay.
do done.
Yeah.
And can you tweak the scope of work description for Kenya, so you can give that piece to her?
Yeah, absolutely.
Of the description of what we're asking for the product to be?
I think the scope of work doesn't need to be tweaked, right?
Right.
That's not what you're worried about.
The scope of work, because I have the original sort of super soft, this is what could happen, and then I could easily get the other, the final one, and the outlook. It's just, it's not like I can just put that in an envelope and send it to procurement. There's a whole bunch of other documents that have to be added. I'll need from EZO, a number of documents, and I need them to change their liability carrier to us. And so usually having a company change their liability carrier, that'll take a couple of days, because it's a phone call from them to their liability carrier. The liability carrier has to type it out and send it to me in the mail. And so that's another thing, but I've worked to try to get them, telling them like, hey, if you were gonna go with, we're gonna need some of these pieces. And I think you guys have gotten pretty much all the pieces together, but they would not have changed their liability carrier to us without some sort of an agreement or some sort of a hard contract, and that's something else that has to happen when the contract won't be executed.
So it's a question of timing. It's a question of timing of how much time Kenya has. It's a question of timing on what procurement needs. It's a question of timing of do we get what we need in the time that we need to get it. All those things, will just let me wrap this up and say there's no guarantee. Even if the threshold is high enough and you say yes to MBEs and that's where we're gonna focus, I'm not gonna promise you it's gonna get done. Because it's last minute.
I would just decide
And that way, even if it doesn't go through as success, we can still have a record that we voted yes on it, so when we revisit it, we don't have to spend as much time going through this. And in the meantime, whatever they don't have, they can get together. And just put a yes on it, I would say.
I appreciate that. So we have a motion and we have a second to spend up to $19,000 in this budget for this Know Your Rights training project. Can I have all those who, in favor, thank you, vote aye?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
I keep count the eyes before.
Any, okay, aye, with your hand. Any opposed, any abstentions? Okay, motion passes.
So on the second question, I would actually also move that as a commission, within the bounds of the city's procurement process, we believe that procuring contracts with MWESPs is a priority for our commission and our spending.
Okay, Audrey,
I don't know if we
second.
want to make it specific to this project or not, or if we just want to make that statement.
I think
And
that-
I think we have to find out how it works in the city's process. So is it, can we, in our evaluation of proposals, can we weight the scores differently? When we choose vendors, as Kenya already just told us she does, are we working with communities of color, other different economically diverse communities? So there are some city rules around it, but I think what we want to be able to say is, this is what we value, right? This is how we spend our money.
In the time that I've done evaluation along with the city
Yeah.
and for the city, yes, you can
Same.
move the weights as I believe that group is interested or what feels is important for that. So, yes, I think that those are things that we can look at the specificity around that in particular, but that we hold NWESB certification as a guiding kind of principle with how we engage and we look at contracts and things like that. So it sounds like you moved.
That was my motion. I guess
Okay,
as part of
thank
the
you.
discussion, what I would say is that in cases where we could sole source to a qualified MWESB, that would fit that desire of our commission to spend our funds that way. So as an example, that's the kind of thing we do. As an example, we want to work with food vendors that are in those communities. So my motion isn't for that, but that's the kind of examples I think that we're looking for.
Thank you, Alan. Does anyone else, for the sake of discussion, have questions or thoughts or?
Well, I know the city already has a, contracts on, I think it's the DBE and which is, is that the same exact thing? Or is it a little different?
Minority.
DB is federal dollars only. MW and E, which is emerging small business, are local programs.
Okay. Which one's the federal? Sorry.
DB, disadvantaged business.
So we already have that in place, we're already doing it, so it just makes sense to just do it anyway, right?
Well, and for us, it's
But
it's a guiding principle for us that we have already been kind of displaying just in, I think, in our practice, but that we're specifying that it is something.
I love it.
that we would move forward.
And there's a condition that the city is subject to, the city's tolerance for it. So
we're
when you say we're already doing it, you have been doing it, you're subject to the city's tolerance for it in the process.
other discussion before we actually take a vote on this second item? Okay, so all in favor of us accepting what we just talked about? Please vote aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. And the last point that we needed to talk about with this, and we're gonna rush through this, is EZO, and I guess our understanding of what had been or could have been a conflict of interest, and our conversation that we've had both with council, city, not council, excuse me, not council, but city attorney, sorry, and clarifying what that would be, if at all, and that we have practices that we've already talked about to remove.
So actually, you have a question. So actually, my question is, Daniel, what is your role at ISO? Are you do you have an ownership role or partnership role? Or are you an employee there? Okay, so you're not one of the owners, or so you are unlikely to benefit financially from this contract if you are not working directly on that.
Because you specified earlier, because he's salary, that he would be capturing the same thing.
So to me, that's where the financial conflict of interest arises, is if Daniel will benefit directly from it. It sounds like that's not the case. Our city attorney sort of tell us better, but to me, that's what conflict of interest means.
Yeah, and that's what we clarified already and what everything has kind of gone through. But again, thank you, this is a long discussion. We wanted to have this full discussion. And so, is it I don't know if it's a vote that we need to actually do to talk about the fact that we're going to engage EZO in it?
Because it might not even happen.
Yes,
I think
right.
it was more
So I think it's just a clarification that we all know, we've had this conversation, and we understand that if this does in fact come to fruition, whether it's by the 15th or not, that we understand this, we've had discussion in place and time for that, so thank you guys for that. We are going to rush through the next thing. Irene, I have you here, we had you earlier, but
I'm sorry,
no, it's
I
okay.
walk in.
We heard that the CRC meeting was canceled, so it probably was less for you. So if you want to come and offer
Sure.
your perspective, thank you everyone for the discussion.
Thank you so much for inviting me again to give you some information. We scheduled an IPR information.
I'm sorry, Twitter. You want to be on that side?
Oh, because the video.
Your back is the mic.
I'm sorry.
And does everybody know who Irene is?
So I'm from IPR, where we accept commendations from the public about good police work, as well as accept and investigate complaints on police misconduct. And as you know, there's a large conversation nationally and in Portland, and we wanted to reach out to the stakeholders like the Human Rights Commission, the Community Police Relations Committee, the Sonic Advisory Council, and the African American and the Alliance for Safer Communities, and just hold a 2-hour information session where we're going to talk about the formation of IPR, the history, the structure of IPR, how we interact with the internal affairs, what the complaint process looks like, and introduce you to the CRC and the Police Review Board and how all those pieces work together. And we worked with everybody's calendars, and we picked Wednesday, December the 27th, so that it doesn't, there's no meetings on that time.
December?
Sorry, May. This month.
Sorry, there's some conference. We're only at the end of the year.
All right. So we wanted to invite you to attend, ask questions, engage in a conversation, because one of the things that our fearless leader Constantine is going to be doing in the next year is looking at more changes in the structure and how IPR functions, and holding the police accountable and building in more transparency of the police work. So we need your voice. Please try to attend. If you can't attend, please, maybe someone from the Human Rights Commission can come and give feedback to the full community.
What's the time to make things up? What's the time?
Sure. We're in the Portland building in room C from 5:30 to 7:30. So it's a 2-hour session. The first 15 minutes are going to be networking and tea and coffee and light refreshment. And we're going to try to make it interactive so that people can learn in different ways by visuals and interaction. And listening to the presentations. The auditor's gonna start it all out and kind of basically share her role as a city auditor and how she audits all levels of city government. So it's going to be very interactive. It's built specifically for you. If you have any questions about this event, and I meant to bring copies, but as you know, the CRC meeting is also happening. But I will be emailing all this information later this week. And if any of you want to be added to the calendar, so it's in your calendar when the time comes, just feel free to let me know. And I also wanted to thank you all for being in a meeting as volunteers on such a beautiful day when you'd rather be at home or hanging out in your backyard or doing whatever with family. So, does anyone have questions?
I think the only questions you mentioned, it's meant for us, is it also open to the public? Did you say that? Okay, I'm sorry.
Absolutely open to the public, but we worked with the stakeholder committee calendar to make sure that it's not on a standing calendar. We're going to invite members of the COAB and everyone else who is already engaged in this process.
And what were we
Room C.
And what does IRC stand for?
IPR. Sorry.
What does it stand for?
The Independent Police Review. We're part of the City Auditor's Office, and we are calling it IPR. I'm sorry, I shouldn't be using acronyms. And the Citizen Review Committee, I said the CRC, that's the volunteer body of an appeal body and advisory body to us, and then also. So.
Thank you, Irene. Any other questions? Okay, try to be there if you can. And I look forward to the email with the information, hopefully.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we're gonna, we've had to move our agenda around a little bit just based upon time, and I thought the really robust, awesome conversation we had around Know Your Rights training. So I want to make sure that we try to get as close to honoring public comment. That's one thing I try to stay as close as possible. We're 3 minutes off. Do we have folks signed up for public comment? I can't. Anyone signed up? Oh, we do have? Okay. You want to? Or you can just call the first person. Sorry.
The first person is Joe Bergeron. Sorry.
Bergeron?
Joe Bergeron.
And if you want to come to the front up here.
Okay.
Yeah, perfect, thank you.
Pass out some flyers here.
I will be there.
Yes. Diallo, Emmanuel, and Alicia Zhao out there. Got a lot of human rights leaders support. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great. So yeah, I'm Joe Bergeron. I'm a policy consultant with American SPCC. That's the Society for Positive Care of Children. And we are co-sponsoring, our Youth Advisory Board is co-sponsoring with Resolutions Northwest, an event in conjunction with the National Child Abuse Prevention Month, which was in April. We originally planned this for April, but we're holding it this Saturday, May 9th at Madison High School. An event to talk about child abuse issues and focus on solutions. And yeah, like I said, Diallo, Emmanuel, and Alicia will be participating and helping us facilitate. We're going to start with Robert Blake from Resolutions Northwest is going to facilitate an awareness circle and talk about standards for the event and safety and sharing. And then, let's see, Diallo, Alicia, as well as a therapist from CARES Northwest. We'll be talking briefly to sort of talk broadly about the issues, particularly CARES Northwest, to give us some data about Portland area and child abuse in all of its forms. And then Diallo and Alicia talking briefly about how it's related to the Human Rights Commission, why they're interested in these issues, a way for youth to get involved, Diallo representing college students, Alicia representing high school students. And then most of the session will be 3 breakout discussions, and then people will rotate to each of those, about 20 minutes each. I'm talking about mostly focusing on restorative justice and approaches to healing and solutions to abuse. And then so the event is free. We're going to have breakfast served there when people arrive at 10. There will be lunch at 12, and then we'll be finished. There'll be time for networking and talking until 1 o'clock.
Sounds like a really awesome event. You guys thought of all of the things that you would hope would be thought of.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Do you need more support?
Yes, yes, we put the event page at the bottom there, right on our Facebook page. Definitely spread the word. Yeah, our youth advisory board, we've asked them to each commit to bringing at least 5 other youth. So, yeah, I mean, we'd like as many youth as possible, but it's open to all ages and to adult allies too.
The question that I heard actually asked though was about you guys needing to facilitate to help manage everybody that was there.
Oh, yes, well, we do.
Yeah,
Question.
both actually, so in general, if you want more people to attend, and then if you need any additional support, facilitation, or
Yeah.
volunteer staffing to make the event more successful, or whatever you
Yeah.
identify.
I'd certainly like to definitely be open to that. I think we have, we're going to be checking in with our youth advisory board to make sure, but I think we do have facilitators for each of the breakout sessions, right?
Yeah.
Kathleen?
We're
Any other
still
updates?
waiting for word on Dwight from Strive for the resources
Right.
breakout session. I'm not sure if he's going to be there, but we'll have at least 3 sessions.
Okay. Yeah. So if you're available to attend or know somebody, or email me.
Just curious, do you have any folks who specialize in tribal children's music or?
No, we don't. No. We've invited some partners that we worked with at Nine Family Center, but didn't get a confirmation.
Do you have maybe like a small number or a specific number of how much help facilitating you need? Maybe like 4 or 5, 6, or?
We wanted to have the 3 very short speakers after the awareness circle, so each about 5 to 10 minutes. And then the 3 breakout sessions, one facilitator for each, but probably 2 we were able to hold it.
I would love to come. I used to work at the National Idea Child Welfare Association and did a lot of child abuse, neglect, program development work, and community healing work. So in case you have any participation, I can just.
Are you available?
I'm saying. So
Wow.
I don't need to facilitate, but I can just be there on hand and anything comes
That would be incredible. I would really love that. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you,
offering.
Ashley.
Human Rights Commission really showing up.
Well, thank you for the work that you're doing.
Well, likewise. You're always welcoming us. Nice to be here.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else?
Yes, Mike Tabor.
Mike Tabor?
Hello, try to make it simple and quick. Just giving a quick report back on the May Day, how that all went. And from my opinion, half the march went pretty good when police weren't really engaging with people. It did get a little bit off track. They didn't follow their parade route. But at Pioneer Square, the police, some of the procedures they used some flashbang type stuff, pepper spray, and it was claimed they did it for their self-defense and for them to exit the area, digress out of the area. But I want to just bring to my opinion was that they kind of drove into the crowd with a truck, a real loud truck. The truck got surrounded, and then they had to defend themselves and get the truck out of there. And all that stuff just antagonized the crowd and it provoked them. And a few water bottles went flying, which now justifies using pepper spray. And I got sprayed slightly on the sidewalk just because it's in the air. The loud percussion things went off, real scary. I thought somebody was shooting at the police. And all this was done because they drove that truck telling everybody to get out of there, and then it got surrounded, and then they had to get out of the mess. They created a mess, used a bunch of their tools and weapons to justify we have to get out of here. And I wonder why they even pulled in there to begin with, because that's what really caused the big problem. That's my opinion. Their narrative is that somebody punched a cop. I didn't see that, but and people were throwing stuff at him. But nonetheless, I think if they would have stepped back and not pulled right in there like that. They created a dangerous situation. And a lot of people got hurt and scared and mistreated because of it. That's just, I wanted to just share that opinion because the narrative's not coming that way from their department. And that was from my opinion. I was out cop watching that day for
Will
cop.
you come to next CPRC meeting, so report?
I could, probably, yeah. Maybe, I mean, I'll think about that.
I think it would be valuable for them to hear directly.
And have you also provided any feedback directly to the Bureau or to IPR?
Not yet.
I don't know if it's more or less good to hear.
I have not done that yet, but I'm considering it.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, I could look
Good
into
feedback.
that.
I do have every.
But you probably have all that
contact
contact information, and I'm thinking about sharing that with them. That's what I shared it with the police by Twitter. But, and then another subject, but I was hoping that maybe some help for getting the agenda put up on the website before the meeting. And it used to be there's a little spot, click here for the agenda, and right now I think it's all for the CPRC is using that little agenda spot, and their stuff is up. And I wish the HRC stuff could have some prevalence on the website.
Yeah, thank you for that. And that's certainly, I'll just let you know, that's certainly an effort. And I think in the transition, obviously, that was me not being able to do it right away. So I apologize for that.
Would you be the person that might help that?
Well, I'm not the person that would put it on there, but I am the person who
I think
makes sure that the agenda is available to be put up there.
Okay.
So I will personally apologize to you because that's, I mean, it can happen this month.
it would just help get your message out to the
Oh,
public
yeah.
when they look at the webpage.
Yeah.
And on the last thing, I'd just like to encourage maybe some business cards at the table, so if I ask for one from one of you guys, you could give me a business card. And I know you have them in your office, but people are all out in the community, and I keep hearing this through the years, they don't have business cards. So if we could bring some business cards in, put them on the table, people could grab them, have a few in their wallet. You're all out in the community, and you should have a card on it, maybe hand it out.
Thank you.
That's all. Thanks for what you're doing.
Thanks, man. Do you have any, look, there you go.
The next person is, or last, is Philip, Hilaire.
Oh, Philip Hilaire. Philip? Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Philip Hilaire. I'm a local resident of Portland, Native American. I just currently, I'm currently working here part-time at the Office of Equity and Human Rights. And I'm currently planning an event for the ADA 25th anniversary. And I encourage you all to visit our website to come and get updates. Our theme this year for our event is sharing our history, dreaming our future. And this was created by our local committee members, and I'm very honored to be a part of this team. And we're going to feature storytelling as our big part of our event. I've narrowed down the locations to 2 for possible places to host. I should know by end of day tomorrow where we're going to host our event. It's on July 26th. It's a Sunday. It's the actual anniversary date of the signing of the bill, so it's a pretty important date. And we also are going to video guests who want to come in and tell a story, talk about their history, living in Portland. So this video recordings are going to be very resourceful for down the road for folks to review and to learn and understand some of the challenges, obstacles that people with disabilities have faced, and challenges they've overcome, and also where we're going. And I say we because I'm a part of this community. I want to help them, and I want them to have a really good time. Because 25 years, really isn't that long of a period of time, but we're still going in this direction, so we have a long ways to go. And so I hope that you take the time to learn and hear their stories. And so I'm just sharing this a little bit of information with you today. I'll leave this if you want to look at it a little more closer. And then also, seated here in this office on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, I have some cards I'm willing to share. In case you want to get a hold of me, I'll leave them here, I can just pass them around. And we're looking for sponsors, caterers, volunteers. There's just a long list of things that I'm going to be sending out for requests. So please share your list so we can reach out. And I hope that you'll have time to celebrate with us. So that's all I have to share for right now.
Great, thanks. So when you do have the location and all of those things identified, and if you also do have kind of a menu list of ways that people can be engaged, volunteers, if you share that with us, I'd love to make sure that as commissioners, that we're interested, and then within our group of who we can send out to and share that we can do that.
Yeah, I'm hoping tomorrow by this time we'll have our location firmed up. And you meet monthly, right? It's a month,
Yes,
so I can come
correct.
back, in
Yep.
a month, I'll come back with a lot more information, a sponsorship letter, volunteer sheet, a list of areas we really need help. So thank you.
Awesome, yes, thank you. And so, Charles, I think, did you mention that Charles, are you interested in offering comment as well? Please. Thank you, Philip.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I was glad to see our videographer offer his experience from May Day. And even though you come to your positions by appointment with the City Council, I know you have life experiences and testimony you've heard from other citizens, and especially the people of color on this board, know to be very skeptical of the positions presented to you by the police. I know that's difficult for some of you who are on CPRC, and clear that you want to think that you're dealing with honest, upright, normal human beings. But the truth is these are the people who send armed thugs to keep citizens from walking across bridges. They lie in your faces and tell you that they're there to serve and protect you, and then they go and say, oh, City Council, we don't give a crap really about people who got raped. We have 3,000 plus rape kits that haven't been tested. We weren't going to do anything with them until we got $2 million from the federal government. So when you hear that the police are interested in solving crime, analyze their track record. Look at what they've done to your neighbors. Look at what they haven't done for other victims. Ask how they can have manpower to get guns and pepper spray and flashbangs and body armor into downtown to keep innocent, normal neighbors of yours from walking where they want to walk, but they can't take the evidence from women and children and a lesser amount of men who've been sexually abused and properly process that. So that's really where you're at with your situation as human rights commissioners and people dealing with the CPRC and CLEAR. It's unfortunate, but it's plain as day. I was at the City Council. The item is on the agenda. It says, oh, these rape kits were sitting around. We didn't do anything to them today, and we're not going to do anything with them now until the $2 million comes from the federal government. Never mind the fact that we have $40 million of greater than anticipated city revenue. So be very judicious in your thinking when the police talk about public service versus whether they're just an entrenched power pushing an agenda that quite often does not uphold the dignity of women or people of color or gay, lesbian, LGBTQ people. It's an unfortunate thing to have to report, but as you heard from the other gentleman, we've seen it with our own eyes. Hundreds of citizens gathered downtown to walk on an International Day of Labor Solidarity, and the city has plenty of resources to come up with, I'm sure, an undisclosed as of yet amount of overtime to move vans full of body-armored thugs under the Burnside Bridge and block off the stairs and spray at least a half a dozen people with chemical weapons and injure somebody with a flashbang, the cap that goes into their arm. And they want to tell you, they were afraid for themselves. Well, when you break into somebody's house and disrespect them, you should be afraid for yourself. And when the police disrespect the people and inject themselves into legitimate, constitutionally First Amendment protected activity, they really don't seem to be serving what they state their purpose to be. We know this nationwide. We know that Freddie Gray is the most recent high-profile case, and we also can't even talk about a number, probably in the double digits, of people who have died since Freddie Gray, a number of them unarmed, at the hands of the police, who have a story that they were serving and protecting. And if you challenge them, they get extremely indignant and say, "Would you like us to leave you to die? You'll die without us." So let's try and focus on the human aspect of human rights and reach those people who are working as police officers and ask them to, in their day-to-day work, reaffirm the same values that you all are working on here. Thanks very much. Oh. And I look forward to hearing, I didn't see it, I haven't thoroughly memorized your agenda, but Pride's coming up, and one aspect related to the Freddie Gray stuff is I hope that you'll be able to connect with the smaller groups that this happen to be small. There'll be the Dyke March. There's a Black trans affinity group, and part of human rights is about people who have broader, more mainstream affiliations advocating for the distress that marginalized people feel. Thanks very much.
Can I ask you a question really fast?
Yeah.
Can I ask you what community you represent, just so
I don't,
if you could identify.
I technically am a board member for the Friends of Occupy Portland.
Okay.
And I've usually been with KBU in the Pride Parade, but I don't hold to identifying, except when Oregonians for Food and Shelter, which is a very right-wing conservative group with a name that sounds friendly, but I try and say that I'm with Oregonians for Food and Shelter and Wisdom and Compassion, especially the last.
Well, I was asking because and I won't take too much time. Do you think this process is helpful for you to come in and you to express how you feel? Do you think it's beneficial to HRC or beneficial to you?
I think both, and that's one of the things that was on my mind that didn't get into my outburst and rant there is that I hope that over the next year and during your retreat that you'll consider that regardless of how effective the COAB may be, it's been great to see them go up to New Columbia and to be out of the 122nd. And I think that you should ask the OEHR to see if it can be a thing that you can do where a couple or a regular rotation of Human Rights Commission meetings can happen at the Rosewood Initiative, can happen at New Columbia, and so that somebody who's like me, who's downtown centric, but still goes to Dawson Park and other places to engage with other minority communities other than my own. It's convenient for me to come downtown, but it would be great to go to the people who are, we know that what we're fighting in the city is a kind of pushing away, especially economically, in order to not getting the full economic benefits of Portland's prosperity.
Thank you. No, we've certainly had conversations about moving the meeting around.
Thank you.
Okay, and was that it as far as public comment? Okay, so we're still off, but I think one of the next things that we want to get done is an OEHR report. I know, Dante, you're typically before 5, and we're well after 5. Do you want to come and offer that? Thank you.
Dante's coming up. Pride Parade is June 13th and 14th.
Last year was just me and Sonji. It was like my first day.
So let's talk about it later on in the agenda when we have next steps and final announcement time. But thank you for the date. Okay. Hello, Dante.
Good evening. Don't have much, just a couple quick things. One, you may have seen the mayor's budget was presented yesterday, and our office got two things. One was a request that we had made regarding additional part-time staff person, which we did receive, so we'll be hiring a .6 time FTE after July 1. The second half of that is that there is a staff person that was funded for the COAB, and it was funded initially through ONI's office, just because that's where it was, that has been sitting. It's going to move and be housed within the Office of Equity and Human Rights on July 1. Not that we have any oversight over it, that's not the point, but it will be housed here for budgetary, bureaucratic reasons. We'll oversee just time and all those kinds of things. But because we have obviously OHR and Commission on Disability, and Judith in my office has been very connected with working with COAB and COCO as I have kind of recently, it just makes sense that it will be housed in OHR. So that's happening too. I'm glad you had the conversation about the budget in terms of the EZO, I guess is how you pronounce it. Because if it, timing is critical. As I said, May-15th is the deadline for having everything in the system to be contracted for this fiscal year. As I recall, your budget numbers is about $21,000 left unspent. If it's not spent on this project and or by the middle of May, then I'm going to move a significant chunk of that to other areas within the program areas of OAHR. One, because I can't wait, and two, because it will help balance out some of the other program areas in the office. Yes, ma'am.
I assume that the retreat costs for a facilitator and space are in that.
Yes, we're already working with Kenya.
Is it
Yes, it is possible already. So, but
With that May 15th deadline, if we decide to kind of implement a sponsorship program and then we want to sponsor certain events using the funding for this fiscal year, would those have to be in by May 15th, or could those still go through June?
I'm not sure what.
So if we sponsor, like, let's say,
or something.
yeah, or even that Glasgow House, is being passed along, that event, for a certain amount of money, would that still?
No, that's not a contract. So
Okay.
that would-
With that, did anyone end with that? Sorry, the ERCO piece?
Africa House?
Yes, okay. So we keep it. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, it's not a contract, so that could be spent.
But that's something that would be paid for out of your budget.
Correct.
Do you already have a idea where you want to spend the money, so not spend, do you already have an idea where you want to go with the agencies? Are they still honoring like minority businesses, or and are we able to know that, or is
The money that's not spent this year?
Yeah, the money that's not, that we don't, the 18,000 or 21,000 that
Yeah.
if we don't spend, do you already have an idea of where you want to spend it and where you want to be?
Well, it's not going to be spent outside, it's going to be reallocated in my office for programs that are working, like the Commission on Disability is upside down in some of its spending already because of lots of other translation work that it's had to do and things like that. And so that's where it would go. I would just reallocate it within the program areas within my office.
But we're probably going to spend it if we're in 19 allocated.
So if that works, well, there's that, and then there's also the retreat. So there are things that'll come up, but if this EZO project does not work, there will be a large amount that will go out, yeah.
Just as an FYI, I was all last week, I was in Philadelphia at a conference sponsored by Cities United, which is a program out of the White House that sponsors My Brother's Keeper and Black Male Achievement Initiative, and Cities United as well sponsors programs and work to reduce violence, specifically for communities of color, specifically for black men and boys and brown men and boys. and also how to reduce violence in community police relations among communities of color. And so there were lots of great workshops. Just one wonderful takeaway, there was a youth panel that was talking about a number of things, and one quote that resonated with me and will for a long time. This young woman said, "All those who complain about our generation forget who raised them." Drop the mic. I just thought that was phenomenal. But there was some really good conversations and feedback on how to assist in doing a number of things to reduce violence in communities of color, improve interactions with police communities, get police communities to improve themselves. A number of things. There were a number of police chiefs who were represented. There were about 60 cities represented in Philadelphia. Mayor of Philadelphia, Mayor Nutter, is doing a lot of work in that regard, and also had a reception where he just cordoned off all around City Hall and had food trucks and had a DJ and he was jamming and he was doing the wobble and he was jamming. So I just can't picture Mayor Hales in a line dance. So it was a wonderful event.
Does the mayor, like, obviously I'm sure you brought it back, what you learned in Philadelphia, has he bitten on to chew off anything that you've given to him and said?
Yeah, I just got back Friday evening, so I haven't really talked to him about it specifically, but he knows the work that Mayor Nutter is doing in Philadelphia, because they're doing some phenomenal things, and he's taken, actually he's got a little competitive spirit with Mayor Nutter, and so he's tried to take some of the programs specifically as it relates to re-engagement of returning folks from ex-offenders, from incarceration, and trying to promote training certification for them to re-engage in the workforce. So he's taken a number of Mayor Nutter's policies and really trying to implement those, so he knows quite well what's going on.
Can I ask, that's awesome. Thanks for going, and one of the things that we talked about in our executive committee meeting was with our call to recommend and lift up things that the city should be doing regarding human rights issues for the work that's happening from a BMA perspective. If there are also things that we should highlight and say, good on you for doing these things, or that you're doing, or that's happening here. If there are things that are major places to kind of celebrate or highlight that we can or should use. I know that Diana Nunez mentioned that. She and I had just a kind of off conversation about when good things are happening. So if you're aware of these things, especially as it relates to BMA or these things, I'd love to be able to use our voice in whatever way to say, good job, and continue, or we support, or
I'd also be really interested to see in that simple bulleted list of some of the ideas that were tossed around, just so that's something that we can kind of think about.
Well, and CJ probably is, he goes to meetings, and there's all kinds of stuff that's occurring for folks to be engaged in.
And so there was a team of 6 of us that went from here. CJ went. CJ is the program manager for the Black Male Achievement Initiative. I went. Phil McFerrin from POIC went. A youth from POIC went, and Assistant Chief Mohica went. And Ralph Evans, who's a consultant, but he's done HR and a number of things set on police commissions and other things, also went. So there were numbers, so we could attend a wide variety, or as many of the sessions as possible. So we're going to come back together and kind of debrief that as an entity and get some of those things that we had. I can send it out. There was a PowerPoint that was presented in one session that I went to. There were 2 actually. One was on restorative justice. Okay, yeah, I was right. And usually you think of that in terms of school and education. This was specific to the criminal justice system, and she's in Oakland. And she has put together this program that's been accepted and is doing restorative justice in felonies, which is unheard of. Assaults, robberies, burglaries. She described doing one that was a rape. And she said, sitting there with the victim and sitting there with the rapist and sitting there with the DA, she said the DA walked out and said, I never would have believed that you could do that. And so, just, I can send it out. Sujata was her name. I forget the name of the program that she runs, but it was just amazing descriptions of some of the work that she done in that regard. And then there was another that described the intergenerational disadvantage specific to black and brown boys in relation to girls, whereas a lot of programs focus on, I mean, the idea was to demonstrate why there's a need to focus on boys specifically versus boys and girls of color. And he described and went down a list of several programs that demonstrated that when there's an all approach of boys and girls, that the girls end up doing better and boys, there's no change in the outcomes for boys versus a specifically approached program, targeted program for boys of color makes a difference. But otherwise, he could specifically, he had data coming out of his ears that could demonstrate that kind of that universal approach does not positively impact boys the way it impacts girls. So it was really, really interesting.
It's probably important also to note that if we're just focusing on our brown and black boys and neglecting to speak on or do that federal data collection, I'll just put the longest initiative around another speaker, that probably, I mean, then there'll be no effect on black and brown women and girls. So I think that's, I mean, that's kind of missing in the conversation.
And I know there are larger conversations that have been happening via
African American policy.
The African American Policy Forum has been doing a lot around what does it mean to totally leave out women. So it's interesting to have that perspective. I haven't heard that before. But it's good for some critical thought and just conversation to continue.
Because that's always the question is, what about women? And this data is very clear. That treating them equally doesn't mean the same result.
I'd like to make just a soft recommendation that in the future, that you might consider inviting one of the HRC commissioners to attend a conference like that. I just think that could be valuable for the whole connection we have to policy.
Well, I think some folks are going to GRE.
Yeah. Yes.
They're going to racial equity. Not the same thing.
Yeah.
So what do you think we're lacking here for this, for you to be here for a few years, or I'll maybe understate that, but I think we need, like, for the black and brown brothers here, and the black and brown sisters here, just in general, like, we've always had a problem. Portland's very different, very unique, but you need to see it from a different perspective. So, and not to even put you on the spot, we can have this conversation over coffee, but, you know, with all the mess that goes on inside of the city and outside of the city, what is one thing you think that could really speak to the body of like our inner community and the folks who like really need it most, who probably need to see you or need to see us all the time?
Coffee for sure, but one thing if you can't offer, because we're already through.
Yeah, no.
It's timing, so.
Here you go.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's, in some sense, it's collaboration, and not being quiet about the collaboration. I see, I spent almost 30 years in Denver, and for me, the demographics are almost the same. For Black, for Latino, for Native, Asians are larger here than Denver, but demographics are almost the same. Denver's on its second Black mayor. Before that was a Latino mayor. There's been a state attorney general who was Latino elected statewide. It's not numbers, because we couldn't elect them. It's culture. But there's also a very, very active infrastructure of nonprofits that take no stuff and make it very clear this is what needs to change. And so this office got created because of that activism. And then it's kind of now silent. So how do we maintain that sense of outrage and urgency? I think that's what's missing, is that sense of pushing the urgency of this a lot of times.
and the outreach. So, I don't know the best way to do that, but how do we push that culture change through our collaborative outreach and activism?
Thank you. And, okay, so we are way late in our agenda, and one of the things that we wanted to get done is our agenda item number 5, actually, which is recognition of service for someone, for Amy Samara. Amy, would you mind coming back up to the table?
We gotta go into another thing.
Thank you, Amy, for coming to the front. So I think for commissioners who've been at the table more recently, you know that as commissioners either term off or sunset their service here at the commission, one of the things we try to do as a commission is put together a few things. One is a letter that specifies, I'm going to read the letter because I think it's worth hearing, and highlights the service of said commissioner and Amy, of course. Even though you told me not to, we wanted to make sure we took the time to honor Amy as well. So I'm going to read this, and then I'm also going to ask that if folks are interested in sharing a few words, that we are briefed simply based upon our time in the agenda. But to not hold us back any farther, Amy, May 5th, 2015. The Portland Human Rights Commission and the Office of Equity and Human Rights would like to express our joint appreciation for your dedication to the work of the Human Rights Commission. Your commitment to international and domestic human rights has contributed significantly to the evolving role of the HRC as an advisory body to the Portland City Council. Over the years, you have given of your time and expertise, sometimes sacrificing all else in life to serve as you felt called. No matter what the challenge or task, you have consistently led by example and embodied a mastery of true servant leadership, no small feat. Specifically, we acknowledge and appreciate that you have improved the operational structure and function of the HRC by developing decision-making processes, often facilitating us and leading as chair of the HRC. Additionally, you have been a strong voice and have brought visibility to and advocated for changes in the areas of police accountability, the city's involvement with the Joint Terrorism Task Force, the Department of Justice Settlement Agreement, and housing issues. Throughout your years with the Human Rights Commission, you have consistently weighed in on issues with an authentic and effective voice. Your organic sensibility to speaking your mind, heart, and soul on important matters of human rights demonstrates a care for the human capital of all people, particularly for those who have been traditionally underserved, marginalized, and disenfranchised. Your contributions have sustained and grown the HRC and the Office of Equity and Human Rights and our collective efforts of human rights and equity as concrete wins for humanity. And for all of that, we thank you. And it's been signed by both Dante and myself as chair. And if you guys would mind giving some round of applause.
Speech. First? You want that first?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've developed kind of a tradition of a prepared or not so prepared speech. I have a sort of speech. Because this has been extraordinary 3 years, lots of meaning, lots of transformation, personal transformation. So naturally, there's been things that I've been very present to. And it was kind of surprising what showed up. So some of you know that I showed up pretty new from an international work, which was field work as a human rights monitor, protector, working human rights in the craziness of the UN emergency relief world. So I came in pretty driven and passionate, really happy to find a way to do this work here domestically. But my people skills weren't that great. And how that showed up was I was just interested in doing anything, any which way I could, just get it done. And it showed up pretty unattractive, I think, at times. And I appreciate those of you who kept with me,
who didn't, throw the baby out with the bathwater, kept giving me another chance. Because I got to see a different way of doing things calmly and how to maneuver in an entirely different world was something that's so important to me. So I learned a lot from each one of you. So specifically, drive and passion through Emmanuel, straightforward presence from Kenya, hold the room drive from Dante, perpetual productive motion from Marcia, grace and patience from Daniel, clarity of purpose from Ashley, resilience through hope from Dearo, ability to tell it like it is, which speaks to an uncluttered heart, Shabri, razor focus ambition, Audrey, insightful inquiry, Damon, persistent thoughtfulness, Rebecca, everlast commitment from Alice. So these are things that, as I'm leaving, I'm very present to, and feel very fortunate to have been able to see in you all. So what's surfacing as I leave is the value of being personal. If I was to have another 3 years, I would dive into being personal with each one of you because I really see how that can bind, that can support this very difficult work that we do. You do human rights work, you're either engaging alongside trauma or, and usually you're working with your own trauma as you make that happen. So it's the work I feel that happens within the commission, between you all, is just as important as what's happening in terms of your advocacy and your outward work. So my encouragement is get personal with each other, somehow get creative to figure out how to do that through the tight schedules and the Robert's Rules of Orders and the city rules, because it's what can amplify the meaning that happens here.
I really appreciate you offering that. That was awesome and great.
You gave me a little time.
Yeah. Look at us, we're always thoughtful, right? One of you guys, it was you, Rebecca, you're thoughtful, so. And briefly, if anyone that wants, I know, again, our agenda is far skewed, but if anybody would like to offer some words, please do take
I'm going to think of, because I worked a lot with you, Amy, professionally, and have come to know you personally, so I was trying to think of what to say in such a short period of time. It's a little bit challenging, actually. A lot of what I would say is reflected in the letter. But I think extending beyond that, even though you characterize your joining the group with, in need of some interpersonal skills or social skills, I actually did not see you that way when you joined. I really appreciated that you had this die-hard commitment to the work, and I felt like we could easily relate with you in that way, and that I didn't have to soften things with some of the hard stuff that I had seen in the community, and where I was coming from, working with highly traumatized Native communities dealing with suicide and gang violence and all of that. So I felt like I could just go right into the heart of it with you, and we could have those discussions, and it wasn't like I had to water it down, basically. And it didn't scare you away. I really appreciate that, because you also have a sense of what it means to show up no matter what. And I really see you as this person that, what I meant by the servant leadership piece of that is you show up, 100% no matter what the cost to you on within your personal realm. And I know that, that's been hard sometimes, and I just really acknowledge that kind of leadership, where someone really just gives all of himself no matter what. And oftentimes that goes unseen, because with that sort of personality, usually folks don't use the limelight of like, oh, look at me, I'm giving up so much, but I recognize it. Thank you.
Anyone else? No pressure.
I think like that. Everything's and I think I learned from you of not having to like soften that blow. Like you'd sit down, have this coffee and tea, and you would not be scared about anything. And in fact, I also picked up from you just like some of the like the direct leadership skills. And oftentimes we think we do so much, and like, she does way more. You know, just scheduling meetings, just to like calling, to continually emailing, to just everything that you did. I really pulled a lot from your story, and you actually helped me to, you know, continue to be straightforward with it. And I appreciate that, because oftentimes I feel like, oh, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings or be viewed this way, and really, at the end of the day, who cares? You know, I got a mouth, so I might as well use it, and if anybody doesn't like it, they'll say no. So I really appreciate that about you. Look to connect with you still after this.
After not going anywhere. Thank you.
In fact, you're still gonna be kind of helping out with Know Your Rights.
Yeah, I'll be doing Know Your Rights as long as it works and until somebody else captures the attention of somebody else who wants to help out that crew.
And then I'm always texting her, so I just want to offer personally, outside of the letter, that when I stepped on kind of in a similar fashion to Audrey as a vice chair, I did it because I was like, something needs to happen, but I did it also knowing that I'd be stepping in next to you, and that was as a new commissioner as well, because I saw the strength in you, and so exactly what everyone has said. I didn't see the lack of interpersonal skills or anything like that. I saw someone that was strong in what they were doing, which allowed me to go ahead and kind of take that leap of faith into leadership, and look where we are now. So count a lot of what you see and what you'll continue to see as an homage to your work. So thank you.
I've only known you briefly. I wanted to say that one of the things that I have observed in you, it seems like it's been a strength in your leadership, is that you seem to have a good way of balancing your passion with an understanding of how to work within a bureaucracy and how to kind of maneuver through. And that's a sense that I get from you, that you have offered that sense of balance, of being able to walk on two legs. And I think that's an important skill for all of us as commissioners.
And I'll say the same thing, because I've been there for your whole journey also, and I agree that what you captured in self-realizing is exactly, it's a real testament, I think, to where you came in, where we all continue with a group process like this, and what we can accomplish together when we learn how to operate within the context of what we're getting, where you started and where you ended. It was a real journey, a real testament to your ability to adapt and to commit your passion to not just holding a line of here's how I do things, here's how I think things should be done, but here's how we can get things done together as a group. So I think that was really powerful to see in the last 3 years.
Thank you. Glad you were around from the beginning.
Well, thank you all and everyone just for taking the time, even outside of our really pushed agenda. But I think for a group of folks that does human rights work, it's really important for us first to be human and take time and moments to acknowledge the actual time and place that people do. So again, Amy, thank you so much. And you're still on my speed dial. So you're not escaping. I'm kidding. But thank you again for your support. Oh yeah, so that's a part of,
oh, I'm sorry.
I'll offer that later actually, so thank you. And what I'm gonna do, guys, we have, the executive committee and staff report was supposed to be 20 minutes. It's not gonna be 20 minutes. I'm gonna bust through a few of these really quickly because we're actually almost at the end of what's supposed to be our next set. So quickly, retreat, I think almost everyone has responded to, is it, who's Audrey?
I got Sam today, so now it's everyone, I think, except for you.
For
So-
Cia, don't, okay.
So, I mean, if you can make it, that's wonderful. If you can't.
I have a previous commitment that I need to try and
Okay.
skip out of.
Okay. But even with that, obviously, we'd love to have you there, but we have literally everyone else, which I think is an actual miracle. So,
Awesome, so the idea is, again, it'll be that Saturday, the 30th, we're solidifying, in particular, the space and location, but we have an idea and we think we're good to go. That would be held actually at Resolutions Northwest, which is in the northeast side. It's in the Hollywood district. It's actually my old building where I used to work, right upstairs. So facility's great, parking is there. The retreat has been designed, we had a team who came together, has been designed really to kind of answer all those tension points that we've been talking about, and that kind of come up in our work that we feel maybe hold us back from really truly being able to go forth and just like, you know, clash with the titans of human rights work. So it'll be on the 30th, and you should expect for it to be the entire day, and by the entire day, that would be 9 to 4 is the current,
So 8:30 to 4.
well, 8:30 is the arrival and
That was so
breakfast.
we could actually
Right,
start.
because at 9 we're gonna get started, like the goal is for.
8:30, yes.
Oh, yes, 8:30. If you show up at 9, we'll be getting started, yeah. So, it is a full day, but breakfast will be included, snacks, full lunch, so you will be, you know, taken care of in that way, but do plan on it being a full day of work. This is something that I think over the past few months, it's always like, oh my gosh, if we had time to get this done. And that's exactly what the things are designed to do. The agenda will be shared a bit sooner, just so you guys have a general idea of what's occurring. But know that there was a great group of folks who got together in a room. I think we were there for 2 hours or so. And we really pulled out what we thought was the most important to be able to push us through. We're not going to be putting together a strategic plan. So that is not going to be one of those standard retreats. It's really going to be about all that other stuff that usually stops a strategic plan from even occurring. Right, so that's what we're going to try to get done. And again, thank you to all the commissioners who came out earlier to make that planning session one that we came out. We were literally done. Like, we actually produced everything at the end of that meeting. It was fabulous. I want to, and I'm sorry that this is so late. It was meant to be earlier. I want to say a formal welcome to our new commissioners who are here. First to Daniel, thank you again so much for being here. And I'm going to say your name, Seato? Seato, sorry.
Could you say it again?
Seattle.
Seattle?
Okay.
Is that right?
Yes.
Seattle.
See it all, okay, yes, thank you. And Teresa, is it Teresa? Teresa is also here as a new commissioner. The one other new commissioner who's not here is Alicia. Is Alicia? Okay. And she's our commissioner who is a youth member, and just know, and in fact I have that at the bottom, we'll be doing specific training around working with youth, and that'll probably be like an hour to an hour and a half.
2 hours, it'll be an evening.
Thank you.
I
She's
have
helping
2
too.
possible dates that we need to decide on, just so you all know, and I'll clarify all this, but we have the option of June 29th or 30th.
I'm just kidding.
And,
Can you say what's important?
yeah, so Andrea Marquez, who was here last meeting, I think, gave a very brief introduction. She works with the Multnomah Youth Commission, I believe.
It's
And
a city county sheriff partner.
Yeah,
The county
so
has one person. She's my office mate also.
she basically does trainings on bodies that are working with youth, specifically how to make it useful for both sides. And so she'll have a youth facilitator who will co-facilitate with her. And these are the days that they have available. Basically, it'll be a interactive work session along with some sort of presentation. And at least Alicia will participate.
So it's a Monday or Tuesday, is it going to be daytime?
So it'll be a 2-hour training, and so it's specifically engaged with, as an adult body and who's going to be working with the youth. It's really around what does that look like, what are the best practices, how do we actually engage versus just saying, oh look, we have a youth in the room.
Yeah.
Like check, right? Like how do we really actually engage a young voice, and what does it mean to do that? So it's meant to be a training for us as folks and as leaders in the community. Hopefully what you learn you're able to also take out to other areas that you lead in.
And one thing or 2 things I would add that I pulled out from her introduction last time was that she kind of really underlined that not doing youth engagement well doesn't have just like a no effect, it has a negative effect. And so that she really encourages the HRC to take this very seriously, and also to not just have one youth seat, but have 2 just because of having that, she mentioned how that having one person can really silo them and Not be good with best practice.
So, and I guess I'll just offer that isn't, that 2-hour training, we didn't put it as part of our full day retreat because we had so much stuff to deal with. But again, we really do hope folks will try to make it out to that and just be a part of it. We want to be as great as commissioners as we can be with folks who decide to also come out and engage in that. And we've talked about the fact that a youth voice is important. It has been. Diallo started serving as an 18-year-old college student. And as a 22-year-old, something like that. He's still a young college student age. But this, Alicia is in high school, correct? And so 16. So this is also another great voice, especially in the human rights work that we're doing. And so I really look forward to us being able to garner a lot from that and being able to serve her and our city better. I forgot to.
Who's facilitating the retreat?
So the whole reason we're having it at Resolutions Northwest is to have a facilitator from Resolutions Northwest facilitate it so we can all actively engage. And so I'm not sitting there doing it, and you're not sitting there doing it, but it'll be we're still specifying who that'll be.
Mainly about Terry, she's coordinating it.
So I don't know yet, but as soon
And
as
is
we
this
know.
facilitator going to get together with you or anybody on the committee beforehand?
Yeah, that's all the work that, happened before. So I said welcome, but what I actually meant to do was to give you guys a moment to just share, just briefly, who you are and why you decided to take the time to sit at this table. So we'll start with you, Daniel. Sorry, I didn't mean to rush over
Can I say that real quick? And just know that there are like 3 people at this table that just did the same thing a couple of months ago.
They're also new commissioners.
So you're what good coverage.
Yes.
Yeah, Daniel Franco, yes. The reason I'm here is because I started getting involved with the Human Rights Commission through the work we discussed earlier today. And I thought that the stuff you guys were doing was important, and I thought I could bring a perspective to it. I hope to do something. So hopefully I think we're supposed to be doing stuff with city council, advising them, and I think oftentimes minority voices either come across as like really pissed off because someone just got shot, or we come across as pandering to the mainstream media. But I think actually having people that are able to have a clear understanding of how life really is for our community day to day, and actually be able to advise people that make the choices that affect those communities is something that is valuable. And if I get a chance to do that, then I'm on it.
Awesome. Thank you for joining. Siada, or you guys can decide who's next.
I'm Siada Edmo. I'm Shoshone Bannock, best person Yakima, and I was born and raised here in Portland. I left for 10 years and returned back about 10 years ago. Let's see. At first, I think I'd love to just sit back and watch what folks are doing and how this kind of rolls out and stuff, to look at possibilities, but I will be completely transparent in saying that I do come in with a strong interest in pushing the city towards having a model where they have a tribal liaison and take the relationships with the folks that they're actually required to have a relationship with, the local tribes around here, seriously. And I came because I was inspired to come by work that my mom had done with the Human Relations Commission back in the 1980s. And the folks who are on the interview committee know this. And she stepped up when I was young, while raising a family, and was a part of that organization, and was able to successfully get the chokehold banned in Portland, which I'm particularly proud of. And my dad's world famous in Portland, and I love he's kind of an activist, kind of performs on Portlandia, but I come from both, the policy and the, funny external persona. And now I work at Lewis & Clark primarily working to engage in building capacity in education and community health for tribal communities, wherever they are, but then also working for Two-Spirit and LGBT justice within tribal communities. So those are my interests.
Thank you for being here.
Hi, my name's Teresa Soto, and I have done a variety of things in my life, but currently I'm the intern minister at the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Salem, and have 1 year left of seminary and 1 class, so the rest of my internship in a history class. And so I'm super excited about that, and that work of building beloved community is what brings me here. And I would like to see communication and safety and collaboration grow in Portland.
Thank you for being here, Teresa. I truly appreciate all of you guys for being here. I started July or August of last year as a commissioner, so I can no longer say I'm new, although you guys know I was really excited about continuing to say I was a new commissioner, and I would say and welcome to you guys that one of the things that has currently or consistently rang true for me is as you come, we invite you and we're interested in your perspectives and your energy, and if you see something that needs to be done, as everyone around the table knows, you can lead getting that done. That's been a part of a lot of the work. What I will say, and Amy mentioned the value of being personal, and so the last thing that I wanted to mention in the executive committee report here was that's something that when I first came in, I was like, I really want to just sit down and get to know people, but there wasn't really space or time for that just because we're all so busy, and there wasn't necessarily budget for that. So a part of the budget that we are submitting anyways right now is, there's twofold. At one of the executive committee meetings, I think we talked about this. That we'd like to gather together as a commission in a social perspective, and so we are wanting to do this in the summer, so it would be in June, and then again in the winter, so we'd actually do January, because obviously November and December are typically pretty full with family and other commitments. So you guys can expect to hear and engage that there would be something that we would have probably at a location where we can host and have like appetizers and things that we can get. I think there's some laws around that, like buying liquor or anything like that, so I can't get you a drink, but. Can we have one? Yeah, something. But what I can do is make sure that you have a few good appetizers. So that's what we can do. But really, the intention there is not to do the work that we're doing at this table or that we will do in committees, but is to get personal, and the value of being personal. I think truly, I think Amy said it well. That's what continues us on, and that's what when somebody's going through something, you can have that phone call with them and hopefully keep them going on through whatever happens to them personally, but also what happens to them as we're in the midst of doing this work.
Can you just clarify my question? So there are laws against us socially getting together and having a libation?
No, I think it's just about us buying. I can't buy your drink.
The city can't pay for your drink.
I get that.
They don't mind if we drink.
You don't have to drink, you can, that's not the goal, I guess.
Maybe was close to resigning.
But what we can do is gather together in particular with an effort to get to know each other socially and get to know each other and build relationships and build that personal infrastructure that's going to help us do all the other work. I put on there also coffee meetings. This in particular is meant for our new commissioners as people join. It had always been something for me. I think, Rebecca, we've known each other for a while, but we've literally still been like, let's sit down for coffee for like a year. And so I think what also happens is when you have some budget, we know that also not only needs to be spent, but it's there. It's meant to take some time and really do that. So Daniel, Sianam, and Teresa, and Alicia, I will personally be reaching out to you, and I think Audrey and I, just at least as chair and vice chair, would like to make sure that we just sit down and get to know you guys, whether it's coffee or tea or something. But really, the idea behind this is so the commission is built within the commission that can last outside of us, that we all have and take space and place to learn about each other and to know each other. So, yes, that is there.
I just wanted to say something too, as sort of like a newer, not the newest commissioner. I really urge you to come to the retreat, because that, I think, is going to be a place to not only get to know each other, but get a little bit more of a sense of where the work is. And what I've been finding, and I didn't find it initially, I was kind of like, I was a little bit daunted by these business meetings, these monthly meetings. It just, I was having a hard time wrapping myself around things, or figuring out like where it went, because it felt like full agendas of business stuff that was a lot bureaucratic or related to city business and stuff. And so I was feeling kind of like hard for me to find it. But I have been finding that in committee work, when committees meet around actually planning and figuring stuff out, that's really where, to me, the more interesting work happens too. So I just want to say, this isn't all there is. If you want more and to get your teeth into something in a different kind of a way that has the time to really process and discuss things, know that happens, and the retreat's going to be a place to help clarify that future direction too.
Yes, the retreat will talk about expectations, all kinds of things HRC. So yes, and it sounds like everybody. So like, Seattle, you're going to see what you can do to be there, right? So, pardon me.
You like games, like Jimmy Fallon games or
Yeah, we got
It's not built into the. We literally have a jam-packed session, but if we are just efficient, we may be able to fit something in just for you, Dave. We're going to build that personal relationship with everybody, but no. Pardon? Over lunch, we do have lunch set in there, and it's meant to not be a working lunch, so we'll see. Okay, yes, so again, we are super late. We have 12 minutes left in what should be our meeting. Looking at community engagement, Rebecca, do you want to offer something there? We can just go get through.
Okay, sure. This isn't official, it's just like a draft proposal of what an HRC sponsorship program could look like.
And so I'm so excited that she and Sonji, I believe, have been working on this. Again, new commissioners, this was something they saw that we needed to do something. They sat down, kind of as Marcia was talking about in our own committee meeting, to have this happen. And we'll be discussing and kind of fitting out more of this conversation at the retreat. So this is awesome. Yes, no, go, yes, kind of like executive level, high level, yeah.
So, and we've discussed this a few times, I think, the importance or the potential for having a sponsorship program and how that could really build a lot of more meaningful community engagement, and kind of, I think it would serve in terms of visibility, but in terms of building community capacity, building community relationships, and just really being out there. And yeah, so, and then a lot of other agencies and you know, the state does this, and just different entities like the Health Foundation. So this actual kind of protocol, it is based off of other entities. So it's kind of that just supported HRC.
Great, and I think that if anyone has any initial question right now, please do. But we do have some time built into the retreat conversation to have this, and this is going to be huge. I literally got off the phone yesterday with someone who called me in particular. Diallo's not here, so I'll just offer it because it's in here. Cameron Witten, that's the Oregon Center for Human Rights. Okay, I see another thing I should have spelled out. But he called specifically looking at us sponsoring a proposal that he had. What I did tell, it wasn't a firm no. What I told him is that we are putting this together, and until we're done with this, I'm not going to say yes or no. But this is going to help us as a commission be able to say yes or no, be able to specify if we have priority around things, and really be able to, first of all, also build a budget line for it. Because in the past, I think it's just kind of been there, and there's maybe been budget for it and maybe not. And I'd love for there to be a process that not only we know, but we can put out and share with people. And like you said, it's going to build upon all kinds of things, and it'll allow us to also engage in the case that we as a commission decide we have very firm priorities that are going to carry us through. But if there are other things that are occurring that we would like to engage with, this may be an aspect of that.
And I also would say, I would envision this being like, I I don't know if it would be an official committee or something like that, we would meet prior to the HRC meeting to kind of decide and or propose, different, and look over applications and kind of do that process before the meeting.
And we can talk about that, at the retreat too. So thank you for all of this back work so that we have something to talk about while we're there.
And I assume sponsorship not only could mean some financial support, but we would be lending our names to officially endorse activities of an organization that we opted to support.
Yeah, usually with any, like a sponsorship program, they'll request, a certain monetary amount, and then what we would ask for in exchange of that is to be able to get free tickets, or be able to table, and then also have our name as a list of sponsors.
Okay, good, yeah, that's good.
Yeah, so I thank you again for taking the time to do this. We so appreciate it. So I'm gonna talk over, we have CDC listed here, and Diallo, look at you, so committed. You came right, but you keep coming right in as we're talking about your stuff. Diallo did offer a CDC committee just kind of update, and I think what I would offer for that, and then Diallo, I'll just kind of toss to you. One of the things we talked about at the retreat, kind of planning as well, was what does community discovery look like for us as a commission, and what are the best ways that we can engage, the best expression of this discovery type work for our commission, and really how can we hone in and super laser focus in on what we can actually get done and do well. The whole idea of keep it simple is like ringing, like it's the first thing in my brain when we're looking at stuff initially, and so do you want to talk about what you have here?
Sure.
You want to see what you have here?
Right. So the CDC is the committee that's usually responsible for the roundtables. They held the first roundtable, and then they partnered with the Housing Community Discovery Committee. My apologies. And they partnered with the Housing Rights Task Force to do the homelessness roundtable. They also, I think, the planning of the quarterly HRC meetings in the community locations should really fall within that committee. Anybody who wants to do that committee stuff, because we've also had some HRC meetings in various places, like what was the name of the Jewish center that we went to? Middleman, probably. And we also held one at the minority. Awami, right, exactly. And we can continue doing those. They're really awesome. We get a good connection with community building partnerships. And so that's some things that this committee can do and should continue doing. The roundtable should continue happening. They're awesome, and so are our meetings in the community. They also would need a budget for the roundtables though, so that would have to start next term.
Is that something you could develop a little proposal for at the retreat?
Absolutely.
Well, so actually, one of the things that at 6:30 I have a parent teacher conference. I'm gonna have to, not at 6:30, but I have to leave at 6:30 so I can go be a parent also. Thank you, Tatiana. So the CDC, the idea in the past is it's been its own committee and it's done these things, but one of the things that we're going to talk about at the retreat is how we integrate it into the work of the commission as a whole, so that it's not just a separate committee. And I wrote here the cadence and plan development. What we do know is these roundtables and these large community gatherings, we're able to garner a lot. And so much so that it typically allows us to really look forward a couple years and say, these are things that the community holds us accountable for. And in particular, we've done in the past, since 2013, a large kind of general human rights, civil rights, kind of like, what are you guys interested in? We've invited leaders within those communities, or within many communities, to say, what are the things that are important to you? That is what led to, as you said, the housing rights work as well, the police accountability work. And so what we see so far, and we'll talk about it at the retreat, is that the next kind of roundtable, and I think it would be such an apropos time at this point, would be that police accountability, the work that we're doing with police to really come together in what would, is it this year or what would it be, 2016? this year?
Well, the budget would have to be next.
It will be next fiscal year, but it could
But I think it
essentially.
should be in this calendar.
Yes, thank you, that's
That's
what I'm trying to like,
Okay.
yeah, put my head around.
In 2016, then we would do another.
Right, thank you. So that every 3 years, we might be doing a general kind of just overall what's happening, and then those other years, we'll be doing and delving deeper into what the community said. These are really important things that we'd like you to work on so that we can present, I mean, anyone who went to the housing one, we saw how fantastic that was. The idea would be to continue those on. And I think if we do this well, and for you, others who were in there, I think that this can lend to a really strong thing without it being a separate.
Well, also could speak to what Daniel talked about in terms of direct city council engagement on policy.
Right, because they show that they're.
Because we had a lot of policy recommendations that came out of there, and that's an
Yes.
example of where we need to ramp up at.
So one of the things we talked about at the retreat planning meeting, which will be explored further at the retreat, is the fact that we're overcommitted and how to get around that and work with the energy and the capacity that we have, because there's a lot of it, but I think we just have too many things going on. And so maybe embedding some of the functions of what the CDC serves and the policy, as an ad hoc advisory body serves, into each of the topically focused areas. So if that's police accountability being one, houselessness being one, potentially trafficking being another, for example. If those are the 3 areas of focus, again, I'm not saying that that's a decision made, but as an example, discovery would be part of that. All of these different pieces that were identified in our strategic plan would be embedded into each of the topically focused work groups or subgroups. That's what I understood from that, and that's because, we have too many, our structure is such right now that we have too many standing committees, we have too many things for people to try and get to and address, and I think it's contributing to a lot of challenges. And it's not just when I say I mean, a lot of the group felt that way. So anyway, that'll be explored further at the retreat. I'm really excited about that. I've been on this body for 3.5 years or something like that. And one of the things we talked about at the retreat planning meeting was just sort of where it was 3.5 years ago and where it is today, because this has been like a journey developmentally with this commission. And so this next big move of ours, I think, is combining some of the improvement around process decision-making that we have, and some of the structural or organizational development improvements we have, with our more topically focused strategic lens that we have, so it can be really impactful.
Is there a link or, not a link maybe, but like some records where we, like individually, can go find maybe 3 big bullet points or 3 big things that the HRC did over the last 10 years, more or less like, did we change our policy around race, racist behavior, sexual harassment, sexism, or discriminatory behavior? Like,
So,
where do I find that?
I don't know if it exists, but what I do know is that's the whole reason why, that was literally what led the retreat planning. That was, as we wanted to talk about how can that be very simple to ask and find later, and then how can we define our work in a very simple way so that we can also hold ourselves accountable to say this is what we're saying we're gonna do, are we doing it, and to really allow, it's gonna be hard, right, because we've done so much for so long, so to really be able to say things are going to have to kind of fall off is what we're gonna do. So this meeting, it's gonna be a long, day, but it's going to, if we come out, hopefully, doing well, and it's been designed for us to succeed, then we should be able to really do great work that we can be proud of.
I can go somewhere online and find it.
I don't know, any of the longer standing commissioners know about?
The strategic plan would be a place where
Wins,
it's.
I think you're talking about
Like
wins,
deliverables
specifically.
on
Yeah, wins, and a small win could be in the way of, we have a diverse board, we have young folks, or, something low-hanging, but more or less on a larger scale, like, what did we do the last 10 years? What are the things that I can pull from?
Well, the annual report is still being drafted.
Well, and I see something here that I have that's in the strategic plan that actually has
Stuff that's
HRC history, like 2009 accomplishments.
It does, oh yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Already.
It goes on.
I didn't even see it.
But there isn't an updated one, so we talked
Yes.
about collecting sort of points of pride, what are the measurable things that have been done, they can point to, and I know there are some, but we don't have it documented. So hopefully that'll be in the annual plan. I could spout off some, but you're right, it should be accessible.
Isn't that what the plan that we're doing right now is gonna be highlighting that and
Yes.
documenting it.
But instead of people having to go through each annual plan, we should have like sort of a condensed, you know, here are some of the things we've done over the last 10 years or 5 years, what have you.
Great.
Is it possible prior to May 30th, take a look at the planning commission's processes or
Planning commissions?
the Planning and Sustainability Commission, their model, their makeup, their processes, or I know they move like that's been fairly successful with the city, and taking a look at that.
Oh, you mean just sort of how they function and are organized and.
Yeah.
I think we can, one of the things, one of the things that we talked about was there are a few pre-things that we wanted just to share that were HRC specific, kind of like, I don't know how many of you guys know we have HRC MOU, like with OHR. What does that look like? What is just the general knowledge of that? And I can't remember what some of the others were, but they in particular were meant to kind of allow us to all come in kind of with a general knowledge of some basic things so that we can do this work, but that would be great, and I don't know how much, again, these are meant to be pre-read, so folks can come in ready to do work with this information, and they'll be shared 2 weeks before.
Are we still in the CDC conversation?
No.
It's 6:31. Yeah, okay.
So, and we already talked about Cameron Whitten, that essentially, thanks to you, one of the things I shared with him was post-retreat, we'll have more information to share with him.
Cool.
Last race talks, I'm just gonna mention, I had a conversation with, not last, but last on this list. I had a conversation with, thank you, Donna, okay. With Donna about race talks and our engagement with that. There's another race talk that's coming up again at Wilson High School. That will be the last of this series before they do it again. Of course, as always, you'd be looking for facilitators to help that conversation. However, to do that, one of the things that I said was really important is that we have a feedback meeting with her, because that hasn't been built into what this partnership was supposed to look like. And to me, it hasn't been a partnership, and that's not okay. And so I love Donna. One of the things I want you guys all to know is the first thing I said was she has consistently made space for conversations to occur that wouldn't occur in other places. So first case scenario, the work that she's doing with Race Talks is powerful. Portland is better because of it, and I appreciate the capacity to be partnering with her. But that for us to partner with her and do that, it means more than us just sending folks at the last minute to go facilitate the conversation. So know that that's the voice that's been there, and that this meeting will be held after her last one. And so we can all, if you guys are interested and want to go, I'll share that date and time and location with you guys.
Because I never got any word about the grant one. I just know.
That's a whole part of the conversation, right? That's a whole part of the conversation.
That was the last one, and essentially I was a panelist. I wasn't facilitating, we just had a group discussion, and I sat on the panel.
And so, yes, that's a huge part. So if you are interested or have been to these and appreciate them and want to be a part of the conversation, there'll be another meeting. I'll call for that after the next race talks. Please come and lend your voice.
So you'll let us know when the next race talks is going to be at Wilson.
Yeah, and hopefully you also see just in general community outreach.
It's not in there, yeah, I've got this
I
too.
have
Because it's not in, it's not in.
So we'll send it out and we'll be able to share it at a later date. So lastly, before we ended, or not before we ended with this, somebody mentioned a co-op connection. Emmanuel, do you want to offer like a 2-minute?
Yeah.
Just update as to what that's.
So right now where we're at with the co-op, we had a couple folks resign. It's like 2 minutes. So Justice Calderon is he resigned. We're now looking to replace him. There was talk about possibly having Senator Ava Gorley do it. That's not for certain yet. They're still interviewing folks for that. Out of that, they formed an executive committee, which they appointed me to be chair of. So it's me and Bud, as well as Ava Gorley. There's a lot of diverse folks at the table, folks who are either mentally ill, perceived mentally ill, or folks who are deaf. And we finally got the bylaws all together. We're having a meeting on the 15th of May, and we're going to do a settlement 101 agreement, like bullet point training for the attendees and then the people at the table who are on the co-op board who specifically probably don't know exactly what it's about. It's been a lot of mess going on, basically. And I'm not pleased with it, and I don't get down with that, and that's not how I roll. But I am sticking this process through because I believe that is something well, one, it's the first time that any state has done this, so of course I want to be involved with it, but at the same time, offer real tangible recommendations that people can take away from it, because if we do it right, Seattle, Denver, Chicago, Maryland can use the same thing that we're doing. So even though there's a lot of mess, I'm still optimistic. Nothing is ever easy, and also with that, I formed some type of like, not law, but rule that I proposed to the COAB, the executive committee, and then also I think we should explore this at the retreat. Just talk about bullying, social media. There are people who have been very vocal in the community, and as you all know, we live in the community, so people are going to talk to us about what's real, what's not real. They're going to hold us accountable, and you know, I've been bullied, I've been called this and that, and sometimes it makes me feel like I don't want to interact with the media because I'm going to run into these people. But I think we need to come up with some type of support and some type of rule, whether we say, okay, well, folks are bullying us outside or whatever that looks like for you. There's only 1 or 2 times they can do that where you can come to the meeting, but you want me to make a public comment, because this person has derailed a lot of meetings. As this gentleman spoke earlier, he said at the May Day event, about 5 folks that got arrested. There were some undocumented folks there. There were some kids who got maced as well because this specific person derailed the group. And this person has just been all over the city of Portland, just acting a damn fool, and I don't appreciate it. So.
Well, can I just say I appreciate you and your commitment in stepping up to lead the chair of the executive committee. For those who are newer here, the DOJ settlement required, or a part of it was that the HRC would have a space and a place for a member of the COAB, and so Emmanuel is the person who serves in that realm. I also will share one of the things we talked about was that work is so intense that Emmanuel is sitting in that space is not being asked or expected to do other committee work, because that's in itself a huge thing. And so him coming here and this report back and this kind of sharing is really valuable, and so I appreciate that, and that constant space and place at the HRC, and just with you and who you are and what you bring to that, I'm proud to have you as a COAB member, so thank you for what you offer.
How do y'all support though? It's rough.
Yeah.
It's rough.
Yeah, it's hard.
So I think one of the things that maybe you can also do, like, thank you for sharing the COAB meeting date. You said it's May 15th?
May 15th, yes.
May 15th. So if you want to email out to folks and say, hey, folks, don't forget this is there, maybe we can be there if possible, and just continue to talk about, we will have kind of a police in general conversation at the retreat, and so the work that we're doing with COAB, because of DOJ, and because we're written into that to do that work, will be a part of that conversation as a whole. Yes, so, okay, great. So guys, for the good of the, so I had city liaison work here. What that really, we're gonna talk about that at the retreat as well. It was just meant to say that it's still very important to us. It's one of the things we're supposed to do. And so we'll be talking about that there. Are there any final announcements or next steps or action items that we need to talk about that folks would like to offer for the good of the order before we adjourn? Yes.
One quick, just about do we have any open seats now with the HRC? Okay.
Congrats, guys. Filled up all the spots.
And could we at least tuck away that we'll do something for the gay pride?
So we'll be at the retreat before that occurs. I don't know what we need to do.
If there are folks interested, you might look on the website to see if there are still spots that you can sign up for to March, because they actually fill up. So if we're interested in signing up for, it doesn't matter, we have to join a group, and like we can join the city or something.
HRC joined the city group, and so there's some DUE and somebody else.
But it's worth checking to see if we can sponsor.
And there's a banner that we walk with.
It's nice if anybody has a pickup truck.
So would you like to lead at least finding out who might be interested in that, and then maybe helping to, so if you want to, we handed out the Universal Declaration, awesome. So if you guys want to get together and talk about what that could look like, Marcia, and then also maybe engage what we would need to do to sign on or join in or something like that, that would be great.
One last, for the order. At the next meeting, can we be prepared to maybe take photos and have our bios ready? Because I know that was something that needed to get done. I don't know if it has. But at my first meeting, somebody, I think it was Emily Godfrey, who was just taking pictures of us to put on the website. So there's that. Also, I'm excited to talk about substantive human rights issues.
Where do you think you came in?
To Rebecca's last point. Well, the brother seats were filled. So Sam had sent a text to a few folks around.
Right, so I'm having conversations with him and did yesterday, so it's not, we're still having conversations.
Good.
And sorry, with Pride, I would say that there are multiple Pride events happening, so there is that larger kind of mainstream one, but there are culturally specific or other kinds happening, so we could also have one.
So Marcia, when you reach out, I guess if you, folks, let's respond in that way, so that we can have a larger conversation
Yeah, I'll
about.
just put a general call out, and anybody that wants to like tell me what they know, I'll pull together information and then talk to Kenny too.
Well, and just to confirm, we can have her file emails as long as we're not making decisions on the work. So we, as we all know, it used to be like, don't reply all, we can reply all. Within our group, when we're having these conversations, let's go ahead and reply all, let's find out what kind of action makes sense. Okay, and we are adjourned, and I'm gonna go get some.
Thanks.